沟通达成了广泛重要的共识。我们认为，双方要加强对话合作，反对阵营对抗。今年是中国建立全面战略伙伴关系20周年，具有承前启后的重要意义。20年的历程表明，中欧之间不存在根本的利害冲突。我们首先是伙伴，我们之间的共识远远大于分歧。中欧关系具有全球战略意义，不取决于第三方，也不应该受到第三方的干扰。中欧作为世界上的2大文明和2大力量，我们完全有智慧、有能力，在相互尊重、合作、共赢的基础上，开展高水平的对话合作，打造文明互动的新范式。我们同意要积极筹备领导人的会晤，发挥高层领导作用，加快战略、经贸、绿色、数字等高层对话机制的成果的落实，全面重启各层级的线下的交往，激活各领域的合作。我们还要开展外交政策磋商和地区事务的对话，双方也愿意积极的推动中欧之间航班往来和人员交流加速恢复，支持两国青年、商界、智库等各界开展更多的面对面的交流。我们认为要秉持开放共赢的理念，深化互利合作。中欧互为最重要的经贸伙伴，中欧合作的本质是优势互补、合作共赢。中欧双方应该保持双向开放，维持产业链、供应链的稳定，促进公平竞争。我们愿意发掘绿色、数字、科技、金融等领域的合作潜力，以开放的态度探讨“一带一路”倡议同欧盟的全球门户计划的对接合作。中方重视欧方的经贸关切，愿意进一步深化改革开放，为欧盟企业在华经营营造更有利的环境。中方也表达了对欧盟去风险，特别是对中国电动汽车反补贴调查的合理的关切。我们跟随欧盟避免保护主义做法，审慎使用贸易救济的措施。我们同意要维护多边主义，合作应对全球挑战。中欧要携手应对气候变化，保护生物多样性，引领全球的绿色发展，同时有力的应对全球公共卫生的挑战。在联合国、G20、WTO 等多边框架内，加强协调合作，共同推进全球化建设，更好地帮助发展中国家的发展。我们也就巴以冲突、乌克兰危机等共同关心的国际和地区问题交换了意见。当然，这个讨论还没有结束我们一会儿会一边吃饭晚餐一边继续深入的进行讨论。我们都认为国际人的问题最终还应该寻求政治解决。那么，这个新冷战是不得人心的。如果挑起这种对立，那么将会殃及这个世界。我和高级代表也都认为，我们今天的战略对话实际上是持续的过程。我们在其他的多边场合保持着紧密的沟通。当然，今天我们实现在北京的线下交往这是一个新的进展。我们的沟通是坦诚的、深入的，是富有成效的，增进我们的相互的了解，也有利于我们巩固和增强相互的信任。下个阶段，我们将继续维护好中欧关系发展的积极势头，筹备好积 几年内预定的领导人会议，那么推动中俄关系保持健康稳定的发展势头，为变乱交织的国际形势注入更多的稳定性和确定性。我也愿意同高级代表先生保持密切的沟通，那么继续我们的战略协调和战略合作。谢谢各位。
感谢王毅主任。下面请国内地高级代表讲话。
Dear Foreign Minister, dear Director Wang Yi, good afternoon to everybody. We have just finished this 12th annual strategic dialogue between the European Union and China. Well, in fact, we haven't finished yet because, as the Minister Director has said, we will have to continue discussing during the dinner because there are some pending issues that need a deeper engagement. So many things to talk. Thank you for this good and candid conversation. We have just been able to meet here in Peking. And it's for me, as High Representative of the European Union for Foreign and Security Policy, a great honor and responsibility to hold this strategic dialogue in order to prepare the next summit between the European Union and China. And I want to thank you, the Minister Director Wang Yi and your team, for the warm welcome and for hosting this dialogue. We finally be able to hold it in person after 2 years of talking to each other by video conference and by phone. And meeting in person is important because, as I said, we had a lot to talk about in this, especially in this troubled moment. Our bilateral relations are broad, far-ranging, and increasingly complex because we share many global responsibilities. We share global responsibilities, and global challenges have to be addressed through a strong cooperation between China and the European Union. These high-level dialogues that we have held show the range of subjects and the responsibilities that we must discuss on the run-up of this summit later this year. It has been a dialogue on environment and climate change, another one on economy and trade, on digital, on circular economy, on energy, and now this strategic dialogue focusing on foreign and security policy. First, we start discussing European Union and China bilateral relations. These are growing complex, and it's not a secret that we have differences on a number of important issues, and this makes more important than ever to continue our engagement with a good spirit of cooperation. That's why in this first thing I underline today is that the European Union is committed to manage our bilateral relations in a constructive and responsive manner, because it is in our shared interest to do it in a constructive and responsible manner. This includes our substantial trade and economic ties. It is one of the largest trading relationships in the world. No one else is exchanging as much as the European Union and China. But we need a more balanced and reciprocal economic relationship. We need fairness, balance, and reciprocity in order to remain as open as we are and we want to be. We discussed about the concept of economic security and what does it mean in order to keep a balanced approach to trade. And I stressed the commitment of the European Union to remain one of the most open economies in the world. Yes, we are one of the most open economies in the world. We don't want to be protectionist, but sometimes we have to protect. And the COVID-19 pandemic, and first, and after the Russia blackmail of our energy imports, have taught us that we must avoid over-dependencies, which in the case of Russia, and in the case of the pandemic, became vulnerabilities. But any measure that we might take will be precise, will be proportional, and will be compliant with our international obligations. It is our responsibility to take European security, but it will be done in proportional, compliant with our international obligations. I also express our persistent our concerns about the human rights in general and in particular, but we stress our concern on the consequences of the illegal war of aggression against Ukraine, which was an important part of our discussions. And in particular about the fact that the non-continuation of the grain deal can create instability around the world and another food crisis. And I ask China, as a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, to use its influence on Russia to stop this war of aggression and to make this deal being renewed. I also stress that any direct or indirect military support to Russia war against Ukraine will be serious concern for us. Until now, and I thank for that, it has not been any kind of direct support, military support to Russia, but it is something that for us is a very important issue. The war has to finish. And in order to finish the war, there has to be negotiation for peace. And the best way for us to take these negotiations going on is the Ukraine peace formula. And we count on China to support this. I thank China for participating on the last meeting on Jeddah in order to take as much as possible international support for this proposal. This war doesn't stop at European borders. This war has a strong impact for the whole world in terms of food security and causing global instability. And I also ask China to put its influence on Russia in order to reverse the decision to withdraw from the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Of course, we also have discussed on the recent terrorist attacks of Hamas against Israel and the international efforts to prevent a further aggravation of the situation and its spillover in the region. I reaffirm our condemnation of the indiscriminate attacks by Hamas, and we agreed that the only solution, the only stable solution, is the two-state solution. And the international community has to engage more in order to make this solution possible. I insisted on the urgent need for all parties to ensure protection of civilians and to allow safe and unimpeded humanitarian access in line with their obligations under international humanitarian law. I underlined the need towards the escalation and ensure that our long-term commitment to a political solution based on this two-state, in which we agree we have to work for, will survive these tragic events. And there are many other issues that we will have to continue discussing during our dinner, but it's important that this conversation has been taken with a good spirit of cooperation in order to overcome the difficulties and to work together to solve the global challenges. Thank you.
联立方籍代表。接下来进入答问环节。首先，请一位欧方记者向国联立方籍代表提问。由于时间关系，请每位记者提出2个问题。I will first invite one European journalist to ask High Representative Borrell a question. In the interest of time, please ask one question only. 这边西班牙电视台的记者。
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Yolanda from Spanish television, public television, TVE. And you have talked about the war between Israel and Hamas. The European Union has strongly condemned the terrorist attacks of Hamas against civilians and has supported the self-defense right of Israel. But there are more civilian Palestinian victims nowadays than Israelis. Also, they have the northern Gaza Strip, half of the population in Gaza has the order to be evacuated with an ultimatum of 24 hours. And also, Israeli settlers are shooting and attacking with weapons civilians in West Bank. Does the European Union condemn these attacks, Israeli attacks against civilians, and does defend support the right to self-defense of the Palestinian people? And on the other hand, Mrs. Ursula von der Leyen has called the deprivation of basic supplies like fuel and food in Ukraine by Russia an act of terror. Thus, the siege of Gaza with no supplies at all, water, medicines, humanitarian aid, fuel, electricity. Do you call, the European Union does call it also an act of terror? Thank you.
Minister, we're sure that these awful events, we are going to take our discussion out of the relation between the European Union and China. We have been discussing a lot about so many things in our relations, but you will allow me to give an answer to this question, although it's not directly related with the China-European Union relation that we have been discussing. I think that the European Union has been very clear in condemning the violent and terrorist attacks against Israel, across Israel, by Hamas, and has deeply deplored the loss of life. I can repeat it again, and I repeat it again. Yes, we have condemned these violent and terrorist attacks across Israel by Hamas. And as High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Policy, as you know, I called for a Foreign Affairs Ministers meeting during our stay in Oman, where we agreed with our Gulf states a common statement. And this common statement that the ministers of the European Union agree, and which represents the official position of the European Union, is that certainly Israel has the right to defend itself in front of this aggression, but it has to be done in line with international humanitarian law. This is part of our common statement with our Gulf countries, partners in Oman. It is also the agreement of the Foreign Affairs Ministers who fixed the position of the European Union with respect to such a conflict. Israel has the right to defend, but it has to be done in line with international law. And in this statement we said clearly that we are against any attack against civilians, and that protection of the civilians is of utmost importance, always, on all sides, everywhere. And about this warning of the Israeli army for the civilians living the north of Gaza, certainly civilians must be pre-warned, must be alerted about incoming military operations in order to allow them to live, which is what Israel has done. But such warnings and the expected move that they should produce over large parts of the population, we are talking about 1 million people, must be realistic And certainly this is utterly unrealistic that 1 million people can move in 24 hours. The Secretary General of the United Nations has said that, and I join him in saying that yes, it's good warning, but the warning has to be realistic in order to avoid devastating humanitarian consequences. Yes, there is a deep worry about the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza, in particular due to the shortage of water, food and medical supplies, fuel and electricity. And as the Secretary General of the United Nations remembered it, and I said after our meeting in Oman, creating a blockage on water, food, fuel and medical supplies is not in accordance with international law. So we joined the call of United Nations Secretary General Guterres, and I thank him for being ready to act, and we support the United Nations efforts to help to alleviate the situation, including by encouraging the creation of humanitarian corridors and allowing space for much-needed humanitarian aid. It is perfectly compatible with the strong condemnation of the terrific attack that Israel has suffered from the part of Hamas. We will further intensify our engagement with all regional actors and with key international partners in order to provide as much protection as we can to the civilians. Thank you.
感谢国内立方代表。接下来我们请为中方记者向王毅主任提问。We will invite a Chinese journalist to ask a question to Director Wang Yi. 王主任您好，这台 TVBS 记者提问。我想请问您如何看待当前巴以局势？中方对于缓和巴以冲突、推动巴以和解又有何政策主张？谢谢。Director Wang Yi, what is your view of the current Palestinian-Israeli situation? What policy propositions does China have for easing the conflict and promoting peace talks between the two sides?
看来中外记者关心的都是同一个问题。
It seems that both Chinese and European journalists care about the same question.
这恰恰说明国际社会应该聚焦目前影响和平与稳定的重大的这个问题。
This also shows that it is important for the international community to focus on the important hostile issues that affect peace and stability of the world.
当前巴勒斯坦形势危急，冲突已经导致大量的平民伤亡，人道形势急剧恶化。中方谴责一切伤害平民的行为，也反对任何违反国际法的做法。
Palestine is now in a critical situation. This round of conflicts has caused heavy civilian casualties. The humanitarian situation is rapidly deteriorating. China condemns all acts that harm civilians and opposes any violation of international law.
针对当前的严峻形势，中方认为当务之急，第一是尽快的停火止战，阻止战火无限扩大，避免局势进一步恶化。
In light of the current severe situation, China believes that the pressing task is first to stop the fighting as quickly as possible, prevent it from spreading endlessly, and avoid further deterioration.
第二是遵守国际人道法，全力保障平民安全，尽快开立人道救援的通道，防止发生严重的人道主义灾难。
Second, it is imperative to observe the international humanitarian law, make every effort to ensure the safety of civilians, open the humanitarian rescue and assistance passage as quickly as possible, and prevent a severe humanitarian disaster.
第三是有关各国都应该保持冷静克制，秉持客观公正，推动冲突降级，避免对地区和国家安全稳定造成更大的冲击。
Third,
relevant countries must stay calm and exercise restraint, be objective and just, work for de-escalation of the conflict, and avoid causing an even bigger blow to regional and international security and stability.
第四，联合国应该为解决巴勒斯坦问题发挥应有作用，安理会也应该承担重要的责任，尽快形成国际共识，拿出实际的举措。
Fourth, the United Nations should play its due role in resolving the Palestinian question. The Security Council should also shoulder an important responsibility for that, build international consensus as quickly as possible, and take real measures.
中方正在同有关各方开展沟通，我们将积极的参与联合国安理会的紧急的磋商，敦促联合国为缓和冲突发挥它应有的作用。我们也支持古特雷斯秘书长刚刚提出的关于保护平民的紧急的呼吁。
The Chinese side is conducting communication with relevant parties and will actively participate in the emergency consultation at the Security Council and urge the UN to play its due role for easing the conflict. We also support the call by Secretary General Guterres for addressing the humanitarian situation,
保护平民。
for protecting civilians.
我们还将通过联合国渠道继续向加沙地带以及巴勒斯坦民族权机构提供紧急的人道援助。
We will also provide emergency humanitarian assistance to the Gaza Strip and the Palestinian National Authority through the UN channel.
巴勒斯坦问题始终是中东问题的核心，是当今世界不断被撕开的伤痕。
The question of Palestine is at the heart of the Middle East issue. It is a wound that keeps being torn open in today's world.
这一问题的根源在于巴勒斯坦独立建国的夙愿迟迟未能实现，在于巴勒斯坦人民遭受的历史不公一直没有能够得到纠正。
The root cause of this question lies in the long delay in the realization of Palestine's aspiration to establish an independent state and failure to redress the historical injustice suffered by the Palestinians.
以色列有建国的权利，巴勒斯坦同样有建国的权利。以色列人得到了生存的保障，巴勒斯坦人的生存谁来关心？以色列民族已经不在世界上颠沛流离。 巴勒斯坦民族何时才能重返家园？
Israel has a right to statehood, so does Palestine. The Israelis have obtained the safeguard for their survival, but who will care about the survival of the Palestinians? The Israeli nation is no longer without a home in the world, but when can the Palestinian nation return to its home?
这个世界存在各种不公。 而对巴勒斯坦不公已经延宕了大半个世纪，承接了几代人的痛苦，不能再继续下去了。
There is no shortage of injustices in this world, but injustice for Palestine has dragged on for over half a century. The sufferings that plague 2 generations must not continue.
解决问题的方案就是两国方案。刚才何立先生也重申了这一点，那就是建立起独立的巴勒斯坦国，这样才能实现巴勒斯坦和以色列的和平共存，才能实现阿拉伯和犹太两大民族的和谐共处。两国方案完全落地，中东地区才能迎来真正的和平，以色列也才能获得持久的安全。
The answer to the question is the two-state solution, something High Representative Borrell also emphasized. That is to build an independent state of Palestine. That is how peaceful coexistence between Palestine and Israel can be achieved, and how harmony between Arabs and Jews can be realized. When the two-state solution is completely implemented, the Middle East will be able to enjoy lasting peace and Israel more enduring security.
推进两国方案的正确路径就是尽快的恢复和谈，各类促谈机制都应该为此发挥积极作用。中国政府的中东问题特使将于近期访问地区的有关国家，为推动停火止暴、局势降温做出积极的努力。
The right way to advance the two-state solution is to resume peace talks as quickly as possible. All mechanisms for peace must play a positive role to this end. The special envoy of the Chinese government on the Middle East issue will soon visit relevant countries in the region to make active efforts for the cessation of violence and for de-escalation.
同时，我们也呼吁在联合国的主导之下，尽快的召开更加权威、更有影响和更大范围的国际和会，凝聚国际维和的共识，推动巴勒斯坦问题早日得到全面、公正、持久的解决。
In the meantime, China also calls for the convening of more authoritative, influential, and broad-based international peace conference under the auspices of the United Nations as quickly as possible to build international consensus for peace and work for an early, comprehensive, just, and enduring solution to the question of Palestine.
总之，在巴勒斯坦问题上，中方将继续站在和平一边，站在公道一边，站在国际法一边，站在人类的良知一边，站在这个世界上大多数国家的共同愿望一边。谢谢。
Well, on the whole, on the question of Palestine, China will continue to stand on the side of peace, on the side of justice, on the side of international law, on the side of human conscience, and on the side of the shared aspirations of the majority of countries in this world. Thank you.
感谢王主任。共同会见记者到此结束，谢谢大家。
Thank you. With that, we conclude the
We haven't talked about China relations with the European Union. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. We have no problem. We have no big problem. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
I gave you the positive.
We can continue our discussion. Okay.